Hello, everybody. Welcome back, Tony the Mole Adams YouTube channel. I know we promised we'll be sitting next to each other on the beach today, but I don't think it's not quite beach weather today, and it's heading south from beach weather in Sydney. I think it's going to get worse and worse over the next few days. But also, we're not in the same city. As soon as I arrived, I should get the message. As soon as I arrive in Sydney, Tony leaves and goes to Canberra. But anyway, the show must go on. Maybe grand final week we can get together, Tony. How are you?
Good. And as you just pointed out to me, Steve, it's a very special day for Canberra, isn't it?
It is. I'm here at my storage room. In fact, you can see if I tilt up, I'm at my storage room and I'm researching my book, The Last Kangaroos. I had coffee and breakfast with Andrew Eddinghausen today. And I've got all these great rugby league weeks. I don't know if it's worth the amount I pay for the storage room just to have 3 copies of Rugby League Week from 1994. But here we, and of course, and this one. What about that one? So,
Yes.
so I've just been doing some research, reading the great work of the likes of David Page and Matthew Gunn from
Yes.
the Rugby League Week back in the day.
And of course, today is the anniversary of the 1994 Raiders Premiership triumph. My great old mate Paul Osborne's finest day. He still calls himself GFH, Grand Final Hero.
There he is. Look at that. Look at that.
Yes.
But of course, you know, as you watch this, we're recording on that day. You might actually be watching it the next day or a day after. Now, don't forget to like and subscribe. The channel's going great guns. Thank you, everybody. And speaking of finals, and speaking of the Sharks, where I've just been, Sutherland Shire, Braydon Trindall, you got some in your column, which is on 9.com.au. Don't forget to read it. Braydon Trindall, you got some mail on maybe his possible future whereabouts.
Yeah, that's right. Well, Steve, as we know, the Broncos are looking for a halfback to replace Adam Reynolds when he retires at the end of next year. And the hot tip was Sam Walker from the Roosters. But as we know, the Roosters don't lose many players they want to keep. Uncle Nick has a way of making them stay, shall we say. And so they've had to look elsewhere. And the guy they're looking at is Braydon Trindall. And anyone who saw last week's victory over the Cowboys would know why. He played, I gave him a 10 out of 10, which I do perhaps once in 10 to 15 years. I thought he was just perfect. The first half scored 2 tries, set up 2 tries, and the Sharks were never going to lose from there. Probably the game of his career. And he, by coincidence, I should say, just happens to come off contract at the end of next season. So the stars are aligning there, and don't be surprised if the Broncos make a very determined bid to sign Braydon Trindall come November 1 when he can go to the open market.
Tony, CEOs used to be big stars, and they used to be quoted in the paper all the time. I mean, Kevin Neal in these Rugby League weeks is on a lot of different pages there. Peter Moore is quoted all over the place. These days, the club CEOs are less visible. There are some with a profile, but Ryan Webb maybe wasn't one of them. Recently departed St George Illawarra CEO, but there's one person at the club who's unhappy about his departure.
Yeah, that's right, and it's none other than Coach Shane Flanagan. And when you look back and remember that Ryan Webb was a big supporter of Flanagan getting this job at the Dragons. Flanagan, as we know, has a bit of history, shall we say, and there were some people at the Dragons dead against him getting the coaching job, but Webb stuck to his guns. He decided he was the best man for the job. And so Flanagan was very much a supporter of him and went to bat for him when his position was in doubt, shall we say. But it didn't do any good. And he's not happy, Shane Flanagan, let's put it that way. And that CEO position at the Dragons still vacant at the moment, a few names being bandied around. So we'll have to see what happens there.
One CEO, current CEO, who does have a bit of a profile, is a fellow well known to ET, as well is Shane Richardson. And your next item is about West Tigers. It's not about Richo, but it's about West Tigers, and it's about someone who got up at a function and maybe said a few things that made board members feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, well, probably one of the most illustrious Tigers of the last 20 years is a fellow called Chris Lawrence, who we know very well, played for New South Wales, played for Australia, had a glittering career in the centres, and there was a Tigers function and he was asked to talk about his career, and he spent much of the time lavishing praise on Tim Sheens. He handed him his debut when he was just a schoolboy. It was a massive gamble. They were playing a huge game against the Broncos in Brisbane, and Chris Lawrence famously scored a try in the middle of his HSC exams for the Tigers in a win at Lang Park. And so he couldn't speak highly enough of Sheens, and that created a bit of angst in the room because several Tigers board members who were responsible for getting rid of Sheens last year and blaming him for the disasters that the club's been going through, I've been told was sitting there very red-faced, really not knowing which way to look. So a rather awkward situation at this Tigers luncheon.
Yeah, Chris's sister Emma's a journo, as we know, covers rugby at the NRL. And at the last World Cup, I was in Coventry, and I don't know her. I introduced myself to her, and she goes, "Well, I know you." And she got a phone out, and her like screensaver was my story of that game, of his debut against Brisbane. Yeah, which I thought was a lovely. As a an older relevant bloke, washed up old journo. It was nice to know someone remembers a story you wrote all those years ago. Mate, your final item is interesting because we often talk about fathers and sons, and in fact, doing just a bit of research, Don Furner and David Furner were only the third father-son combination to go on Kangaroo Tours back in '94. But now we have an added dimension in this, Tony, don't we? Because it's not just fathers and sons. Now we've got daughters, nieces, mothers, and their brothers and their uncles and their dads, because the women's game is really exploding. So you've got a nice little item on that.
Yeah, and in this case, it's brothers and sisters. We have a young lady called Eva McKewin, and she made her debut for the Knights in the NRLW last weekend. She's an 18-year-old back rower. She played for New South Wales State of Origin in the under-19s earlier this season. And it's been a big week for the family because her brother, Jermaine, who's also a back rower and also played for New South Wales at under-19 level, has just signed a 3-year deal with the Knights. And as if that's not enough, there's a third sibling, Matty, who's a hooker. He played for New South Wales CHS this year, and he's 17, and he's in the Knights pathway system. So a shout out to their parents, Matt and Deb McKewin, on a job pretty well done. I think the Knights may owe them a debt of gratitude in the next few years if these 3 kids live up to the hype, which Knights officials tell me they're very capable of doing.
Nice item there, Tony. And thanks again for joining us, everybody. And don't forget, if you haven't already, like and subscribe. And I've got a new reason for you to like and subscribe. We're posting all Tony's columns on the community tab, right? So you will actually get an alert not only when we do a new video, but also when Tony writes a new column. So that's got to be another reason. If you haven't already subscribed to the station, please do. Tony, I will see you. Maybe we'll do 2 more before the grand final. So I'm off to the second preliminary final this weekend. So that's exciting. It's my first NRL game in Australia. We're both in Vegas, but since the Dolphins' first game at the beginning of last year. So I'm looking forward to that. And we'll see you next week.
Sounds great, Steve. And 2 huge games this weekend, and then the big one. So it's coming to a good climax. And
2 sudden death semis in the UK as well. So it's all finals this weekend in both hemispheres. Make sure you watch your footy this weekend, cheer for your team. And of course, on Sunday, the New South Wales Rugby League finals day as well, grand final day as well, and it's with expansion on the horizon and nostalgia in the air. What better game than Newtown and Norths?
Yes.
Yeah.
Go the Mighty Jets.
What a segue that was. What a segue. You couldn't even see it coming. No one saw it coming. Goodbye, everybody.
Thanks, Steve.